Hi there, and welcome to the Okey Dokey's crochet tutorial for making your very own adorable bee. I'm Haley, and I'm so excited to crochet with you today. In this video, we'll go step by step so you can follow along at your own pace. Before we dive in, some of the basic crochet skills and stitches you'll need for this project are single crochet, increase, decrease, color changing, and chain stitches. If you're new to any of these, don't worry. You can find quick tutorials for them right above this video on this page, or head to our crochet basics section on the tutorial page of our website. Take your time practicing before jumping in here. There's no rush. Let's take a look at everything included in your kit to make your cute little bee. If you're using the Okey Dokey's crochet kit, here's what's included. We have a hook, we have our safety eyes, a stitch marker, yarn needle, we have our yarn, and some stuffing. Now, a quick note before we get started, don't hesitate to pause or rewind anytime. You've got this. All right, let's get started. Grab your yarn and hook, and we will begin with making our magic ring alternative. So, holding the yarn in your non-dominant hand, you're gonna wrap it around, kind of make an X is how I like to do it. Go under the first one, grab the working yarn with the hook, pull up a loop, grab the working yarn again, pull up another loop. Now holding this loop on the hook with your finger, pull on the yarn tail right there to get it nice and tight. And then we're going to chain one more. Now in that second chain from the hook, we are going to do 12 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. We're going to go ahead and grab our stitch markers and get that placed. All right. For round 2, we are going to do a single crochet and then an increase, and we're going to repeat those 6 times. So let's start with a single crochet. And then an increase, remember, is just 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So we're going to do our increase. All right. Single crochet. Increase number 2. Single crochet. Increase number 3. Single crochet. Increase number 4. Single crochet. Increase number 5. Single crochet. Increase number 6. All right, go ahead and move your stitch marker up. All right, round number 3, we're going to do a single crochet, then an increase, and then another single crochet, and we're going to repeat those steps 6 times around. single crochet, increase, single crochet, 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 single crochet, increase, and a single crochet to finish it off. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, round 4, we're going to be doing 3 single crochets and then an increase. And we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, increase, 1, 2, 3, 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 increase. All right, go ahead and move the stitch marker up. All right, for round 5, we're going to be doing 2 single crochets, an increase, and then 2 more single crochets, and we're going to repeat that 6 times. So 1, 2, increase, 1, 2, 1, 2, increase, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, increase, 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 1, 2. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, now we're going to start this round with a color change. But for round 6, we're going to be doing 5 single crochets and then an increase. So let's grab our black yarn. All right, so to do a color change, we are going to, holding the yellow yarn, we're going to insert our hook and pull up a loop with the yellow yarn. Then we're going to grab the black yarn and we're going to use that to pull through to finish that single crochet. And that's going to count as the first single crochet in this round. So we're going to do 4 more with the black yarn. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to do an increase. All right, and then I am quickly just going to tie the start to the black yarn with the working yellow yarn. And I'm just going to tie a little knot. Just make sure that you tie it tight enough that it's going to stay and be small, but it's not going to pull too tight and ruin your project. But that way it doesn't come unraveled. All right, so let's keep going. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase, 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 and our last one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, increase. Alright, and you should still have one yellow stitch at the end there just because that's where we started the second round. Go ahead and move that stitch marker up. If you want to, you can also do the color change on the last stitch of round 5 if you want to, just to kind of help. It might make it a little easier, but I like to do it on the start of the next round, just that way I know exactly where I'm at and I don't have to try and figure out the round. So, but if you wanted to do it on that last round, or on the last stitch of round 5, you totally can. All right. Now we're gonna start this round and we're gonna switch it back to yellow and we're just gonna single crochet all the way around. So again, insert your hook, pull up a loop with black, and then grab the yellow yarn and pull it through. All right, and we're just gonna keep going around, and we're just gonna single crochet around for round 7. If you want to, you can cut off the black working yarn if it's gonna get in your way, bug you, if it's gonna confuse you too much. You're welcome to cut it off at this point. We'll be using yellow for the next 4 rounds, so it's totally fine if you need to cut it off and reattach it later, or you can just leave it on. It's not that big of a deal. Make sure that when you are doing these stitches, you are inserting your hook through both the front loop and the back loop every single stitch. Otherwise, it can just kind of make your piece look a little bit off, but if you do accidentally do it a couple of times, it's not a big deal. It'll just make your piece look cleaner if you can do it every single time. And if you need to go slower to make sure you go through both of those loops, go for it. All right, go ahead and move that stitch marker up. All right, for round number 8, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're just going to be single crocheting all the way around. Again, you can leave that black yarn attached, you can cut it off, whatever works best for you. All right, move the stitch marker up. Now round number 9, same thing, single crochet all the way around. right, move the stitch marker up. And round number 10, same thing, single crochet all the way around. Alright, now as we're getting near the end of round 10, I am going to color switch over to black. So again, I'll pull up that loop with yellow, but then we're going to finish the single crochet with black. Move the stitch marker up. And if you kept the yarn attached from the first time like I did, make sure you kind of pull it a little looser in there so that there's a little gap. That way you're not pulling it tight so that it's constricting and folding it in weird ways. So make sure that you just pull it a little loose right there, and then obviously you'll pull this tight to keep going there. So just make sure that you've got a little bit of wiggle room right there, especially when you stuff the bee, it might kind of pull, so just be careful of that. Around 11, 12, and 13, we're just going to be doing single crochets around. However, we are color changing every other round. So you'll do a round in black, a round in yellow, and a round in black for those three. So we're going to start with our 42 single crochets in black. All right, now whatever type of color change you decide to do at the beginning of this group of color changes, doesn't matter what color change you did here, that one's on its own, but whatever color change you decided to do right here, make sure you keep doing that same color change all the way down. So if you decided to color change on the last stitch of a round, make sure you do that throughout the next few steps. If you decided to color change on the first stitch of the round, make sure you do that on the next few steps. That way it's all the same instead of switching every single round or whatever. It'll just kind of help keep your stripes a little cleaner. So I decided to color change on the last stitch of the round. So I'm going to go ahead and color change over to yellow. All right, then I'm going to move my stitch marker up. And as you're color changing, if you're keeping the yarn attached every single time, you are going to find these yarns start to just kind of get twisted together. If they start to get twisted together, you can try like rotating your piece to untwist them, or at least just pulling the twist down to further down the working yarn so that you're not holding it in your hand all twisted. Or you can just cut the yarn after every single round, but sometimes that gets messy on the inside, so sometimes it's a little cleaner to just keep the yarn going. All right, round 12, again, single crochets all the way around, this time in yellow. All right, once again, we're going to use the same color stitch. Color change, sorry. So I've been color changing on the last stitch of the round, so that's what I'm going to do on this one as well. So let's switch over to black. And then move that stitch marker up. All right, round number 13. Single crochet all the way around again, this time in black. Alright, again, color change. Same as you've been doing. Back over to yellow. Move that stitch marker up. Alright, round 14, we are going to be doing 5 single crochets and then a decrease, all with the yellow yarn. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for the decrease, there's a couple different options you can do. You can do an invisible decrease or just a regular decrease. If you do an invisible decrease, you won't get this kind of jaggedy texture that you've got going on with the rest of the stripes. Just that's how you do the invisible decrease. If you do a regular decrease, you will kind of get these V shapes on your pattern. But you have to do it very carefully so that it doesn't create weird bumps or anything in your pattern. So I'm going to do a regular decrease because I want it to have this texture going throughout, but you can do an invisible if you want to. So for a regular decrease, we're going to insert our hook and pull up a loop. And then we're going to take those two, we're going to insert our hook into the next loop or next stitch and pull up a third loop. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And you just kind of have to make sure you keep the tension on this yarn and you pull it pretty tight, just so that way this part looks clean. And then we'll keep going. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a regular decrease again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, regular decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, regular decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, decrease, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, the interesting part about color changing with a decrease is we're going to get all the loops on the hook, and then we're just going to yarn over and we're going to pull the black all the way through all those loops. Move the stitch marker up. Now this is going to be our last round with black, so when we get to the end, we're going to tie it and cut it off so that way we don't unravel any. So for round 15, we're going to do 2 single crochets, a decrease, and then 2 more single crochets. So let's start 1, 2, and again, I'm just doing a regular decrease so I keep this texture going. Decrease. 1, 2, decrease. 1, 2, decrease. If you mess up, especially on this round, because it is kind of confusing, again, just pull on it and redo it. So I pulled mine out back to the decrease, the first decrease. Then we're going to do 1, 2, then 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2, 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 1, 2, decrease, 1, 2. All right, move that stitch marker up. Oh, and I just realized I forgot to color change in that last one, so I'm just gonna undo just the last stitch. And we're gonna go ahead and color change back to yellow. All right. And then because we're done with the black, I'm gonna go ahead and cut mine off just so I can kind of get it a little out of the way. I'm still gonna leave a little bit of a tail. And then I'm actually just gonna grab this other black yarn that we used. And I'm just gonna tie a really loose knot with it, just so that it can only come unraveled so much. It doesn't completely come unraveled, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I'm just gonna tie a really loose knot in there. So, all right. Round 16, we're gonna do 3 single crochets and a decrease in yellow. 1, 2, 3, decrease. Again, I'm doing a regular decrease to keep this texture going. 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease, 1, 2, 3, decrease. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, round 17, we're going to do a single crochet, a decrease, and then another single crochet. So, 1, and I'm just going to keep using a regular decrease, even though we're no longer going to be seeing that texture. I'm still going to do it just to keep my decreases even throughout the whole project, but you can do whatever you want. 1, 1, decrease, 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 1. All right, move that stitch marker up. All right, now we're going to be stuffing it and putting those eyes in. So for the eyes, we're going to put it on the opposite side of all of our color changes because we want it to look pretty. And we're going to put it in the middle of this thicker yellow band. So somewhere between rounds 8 and 9 is usually good. 7 and 8 is also good. So I like to just kind of pop the first eye in there. And don't put the back on yet, just kind of put it in. And then you probably want to leave 6 or 7 stitches visible in between. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to go an extra stitch before sticking it in. Perfect. I like the placement of that, so I'm going to go ahead and pop the backs on. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and grab our stuffing so that we can stuff Mr. Bee a little bit. All right, he is fairly easy to stuff just because it is one big circle, so there's no weird crevices or anything to fill with stuffing that you've got to try and get it into. So just kind of insert a little stuffing at a time. We don't want to overstuff them, and we want to be able to still manipulate where the stuffing is. So just keep adding stuffing until you feel like your bee is stuffed enough for you. Just kind of depends on how hard, like the softness of your bee. I'm gonna add just a little bit more in there. What I like to do is stick my fingers right into the center of the stuffing and push it out to the edges. That way I can really kind of get a feel. And then I'll take more stuffing that I'm putting in and I can just stick it right into the center instead of trying to stick the new stuffing into the edges of the bee. So we're just gonna stick it right down the middle. Perfect. All right, I like where that's at, so let's go ahead and finish up our bee. All right, round 18, we're gonna do a single crochet and then a decrease. Just repeat that 6 times. So single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease, single, decrease. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and just take my stitch marker out at this point, just because at the end of this round it's gonna get pretty tight to take out. All right, so round 19, we're just gonna do 6 decreases all the way around. It is our final round. So let's get started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, go ahead and cut the yellow yarn off. Pull it through, oops. And then go ahead and thread that yarn tail into a yarn needle so we can close up our little bee. All right, to close them off, we're just gonna take our yarn needle and we're gonna thread it through the front loops of our last round, and only the front loops. That's how we're gonna get it to close. So you're just gonna insert it through the front loop and just pull all the way through. Pretty easy. If you accidentally go through both the back and the front loop, it's not a big deal. As long as you get the bottom of your bee closed, that's what matters. Perfect. All right, and then I'm just gonna take mine and just kind of thread it up, pull it out somewhere random on the bee. With this one, it's kind of hard. You wanna make sure you at least bring it out somewhere where there's yellow. You don't wanna bring it out in the middle of one of the black stripes, so just be aware of that. But even if you do bring it out in the middle of a black stripe, you're gonna cut it off anyways and tuck it in, so it's not that big of a deal. But I like to put it in the middle of a yellow anyways, just in case you see a little bit of it sticking out. All right, next we gotta make the wings and antennas, but now you have your finished bee body. All right, grab your black yarn and we're gonna get started on the antennas. So we're going to start with our magic ring alternative. And then we're going to chain 1. And then in that second chain from the hook, we're going to be doing 5 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now for the antennas, I'm not going to be using a stitch marker just because it's so small that it's kind of hard to get them in and out. But if you feel like you need to use a stitch marker, please do. Do whatever you need to do to make your bee the best for you. For round 2, we're going to be doing 5 increases. So let's go ahead and start. All right, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, and 5. All right, for rounds 3 and 4, we're just going to single crochet 10 single crochets around. So I'll start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, and one more time around. Start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, now for round 5, we're going to do 5 decreases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now you should have just this little ball. If it ends up being a little pointy, just because of the way that it's done, you can kind of shape it. You can add some stuffing if you want, but it should just kind of round out the more you mess with it. All right, so now to finish off the antenna, we're gonna do a decrease. Just in that round. All right. And then we're gonna do a single crochet. Then we're going to do another decrease. And that'll count as our round 6. All right, now you should kind of have just a very small circle going around. And we're just going to single crochet a couple of times in there. Just kind of going around in that circle still. But it's got to be a really small little circle, or even just doing some single crochets in a chain. I don't know, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable, but I'm just doing mine kind of in a very tiny little circle so that you'll end up building this little straight path there, this little straight one. Right. Sometimes it's hard to get the hook into these smaller ones. So if you're struggling, you can always adjust it however you want to. You can add some chains. You can kind of just do whatever to make it easier for you. And apparently I'm struggling a lot right now to get this through. Ah, here we go. Nope. There we go. And you could totally do it however long you want to. Try and get it at least a little bit because you are going to be attaching it with that little skinny part right there. So it's really just however long you want your antennas to hang down. So I'm going to add just a couple chains to finish mine off just to give it a little more length. And then when I'm done, I'm just going to kind of pull it out. And we're going to cut it off. Pull it tight, and then you have one antenna done. It'll just kind of look like a little thing. As long as you've got the ball and then it's attached with a little thicker right there, and then you've got your yarn tail, you should be solid. So we'll set that aside, and let's move on to the other one. So again, start our magic ring alternative. Chain 1, and then 5 single crochets in that second chain from hook. 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, go ahead and start your 5 increases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. And now just 10 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, man, I just got my hook stuck. Can't even get it out now. Hold on. There we go. Take number 2 at that stitch. And if you have spots that are just really hard to get to, it may just be that was a really tight stitch you did, or you're just grabbing extra pieces with your hook. So just, if you need to, just kind of go in a different angle. Aha, got it. Perfect. we're going to go around twice with 10 single crochets. All right, now we're going to do our 5 decreases. Start shrinking it down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Now another decrease. Another single crochet. And then another decrease. Single. Decrease. All right, and then just single crochet around till you get the same length as the other side, or whatever length you would like for your bee's antennas. Oops. It gets really hard because it gets really tiny and kind of hard to see, especially with the black, so just do your best. Again, if you need to just kind of do some chains instead, you can totally do that. You can alter it however you want to make it look best. And then at the end, I just like to chain like 2 or 3 to finish it off, just before I pull it out. Just to kind of give me a little more length on there. Perfect. Now we have both antennas. All right, let's go ahead and get started on those wings. So go ahead and grab your white yarn and we will get started. For the wings, we're going to be making 2 small wings and 2 large wings. And then we're going to sew one of each together. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start with our magic ring alternative. All right, we're going to start with the small wings first. We're going to make 2 of them, and we're just going to do 5 single crochets in that second chain from hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then again, I'm not going to use a stitch marker because this is a really simple project, this little wing. So we're just going to leave it as is, and we're just going to do 5 increases around. So 1, 2, and 2, three, 4, and 5. Alright, we're going to go ahead and end this one with a slip stitch. So insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop all the way through. You don't need to leave a super long yarn tail on this one. I'm just leaving a bit of one right now, but you don't need to leave it super long, just kind of there. All right, we're gonna go ahead and make another small wing. Magic ring alternative. Five single crochets in the second chain from the hook. Three, 4, 5. All right. And then we're going to do 5 increases. Oops. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Remember, end it with a slip stitch. Specifically for this one, I like to end it with a slip stitch on the wings just because they're just flat. They're not going to be closed off or anything. So we want to make sure that these are going to stay intact. So I like to end it with a slip stitch just to ensure it. And if it kind of starts to curl because it's going to a little bit, just kind of pull on it, stretch it a little bit. Not too hard, you don't want it to break. The yarn is really strong though, so you'll be fine. Just kind of pull it out a little so it sits a little flatter. All right, now onto the large wings. We are going to do our magic ring alternative. And this time we're going to do 8 single crochets in that second chain from your hook. So we'll start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, and then we're just going to do 8 increases all the way around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 and 8. All right, again, you're going to end it off with a slip stitch. Pull it tight. All right, one more large wing. Magic ring alternative. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 single crochets in that second chain from your hook. And last step, 8 increases, around. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, slip stitch to finish it off. Whoops. All right, you can go ahead and put that crochet hook away for a minute and grab out that yarn needle. All right, I'm going to start with the wings just so that the antennas don't get in the way while we're doing the wings. So go ahead and grab one small wing and one big wing because we're going to attach them. So I'm going to use the yarn tail from the small wing. We're going to start by threading that through our yarn needle. Oops. Such a struggle sometimes. All right. And then using that attached thread, I'm going to cut the yarn tail on my large wing just quite a bit shorter because we're actually not going to use our yarn tails from the large wings. And then I'm just going to kind of do the same. I'm just going to kind of weave these little yarn tails just around the edges of the wings, just a little on the large wing, just maybe like 3 or 4 times, just kind of loop it around the edge before totally cutting it off. And then with this back one, I'm just going to pull it up through the middle. And then just cut it off because it's fine. Perfect. So now we have our large wing just as is, and we have our small wing attached here to the yarn needle. So we're going to take our yarn needle and we're just going to sew these two together. So you're just going to insert your yarn needle just somewhere on the edge of the large wing. Go ahead and pull tight so that it brings them together. And then we kind of just want it to be, you almost want it to be in this little shape right here. You don't want them to just be like that. You kind of want them a little closer together than that. Almost overlapping a teeny bit, but again, it's up to you. And you're just going to sew the two of them together just a little bit. You don't want them to be so sewn together that they don't like move individually. So almost just like 1 or 2 stitches is plenty to keep them together. And then once you've sewn them together, before I sew it onto the bee, I'm going to do the same thing I did with the larger wing, just on the smaller wing. I'm just going to pull it up through another spot on the wing. And just go ahead and trim that yarn tail off. That way we don't have to try and cut it off when it's on the bee. All right, grab your bee. And we kind of have to decide where we want to place our wings. You can kind of decide if you want them to be a little more back here, if you want them to be super close touching in the back, or if you want them out more so you can see them on the sides. As you can see on our finished bee, they're kind of sitting right here, so a little further apart. That way, whoops, from the front of the bee, you can see them just barely peeking out there. So I think that's what I'm going to do on this bee. So kind of aiming for like even with the eyes just in the back. And I am going to keep them kind of sewn at the same height level as the eyes, maybe 1 round below. Probably this right here where this black is where you want it to, is where you want the middle of your wing to be. Because remember, we have the middle of the wing attached right here to this. So you're not sewing the bottom, you're sewing the middle of the wing. So once you get it attached to the bee, you just kind of have to decide how you want to sit. If you want it to kind of pull forward a little more, make sure you sew it that way. If you want it back, you sew it that way. I'm just going to kind of put it in, and I'm going to do 1 stitch up through the small wing. Whoa. 1 stitch up through the small wing, back into the bee's body. And then 1 up through the big wing. And then back into the bee's body, and just bring it out somewhere like so. Go ahead and cut it off. All right, and then depending on if you want the wings to be even or not, then you're gonna try and place it the best you can. So my eyes are right here where my thumbs are. This wing is right there, so I'm gonna try and get the other one to be like right there as well, kind of where this gap is, but we'll see. So as you can see, this is where my color change is happening in the back. So it's gonna kind of be in the middle, but for some reason this one is up here. So I'm gonna try and put my wing right in line with that. But from the front, we have 1 little wing on like that. So you can just kind of barely see it peeking out. All right, let's get our second one ready for sewing. So again, on the big wing, we're gonna cut the yarn tail off. And then we're just gonna kind of wrap it around. Like I said, about 3 to 4 times should do the trick. I just do this so that I have a little bit of yarn tail. That way, if it does end up peeking out at all, it's not gonna come like unraveled because we've wrapped it around and we sealed it off with a slip knot. So we should be good to go. And then with this yarn tail, again, just gonna insert it somewhere in the middle of my bee wing. Pull it up through and cut it off, just like that. All right, big wing is ready. Let's get the little wing ready. We're just gonna start by pulling that yarn tail, that little yarn tail, up through, and we're gonna chop it off. All right, and then thread that long yarn tail into our yarn needle. And then just start by sewing it onto the big wing. Again, only like 1 or 2 stitches is all you need for this one to get these two sewn together. You don't want them super sewn together, just enough that they're not going to come apart. Perfect. All right, and then make sure that you sew it on right so that the small wing is on the bottom, because sometimes the big wing ends up on the top, so we want it to be, again, we kind of want it to be tucked like that to the side. So again, we're going to kind of line it, whoops, it's on top of the yarn. Okay, we're going to kind of line it up where we want it to be. I think that looks good. And then we're just going to go ahead and pop it on right where we want it to be sitting. All right. And then again, go through the body. Then go up once through the big wing. Back down into the body. Up through the small wing. And back into the body. All right, and then you can kind of manipulate the wings once they're on. They're gonna just kind of curl at first just because that's how they're used to be, but the more you mess around with it, the better it'll be. Go ahead and cut those yarn tails off. And you've got your wings all attached now on Mr. Bee. So let's go ahead and get those antennas attached and you will be all finished. All right, so to attach the antenna, grab an antenna, attach that yarn tail to a yarn needle, and these are going to be super easy to attach, very minimal sewing. And they're so fun once they're attached. All right, go ahead and decide where you want the placement to be. So I kind of want it on the top here, in the line, like straight up from the eyes. No, I think I want it right here on the outside of this ring, I think is where I'm going to do mine, right outside of our little magic ring alternative. And we're just going to go ahead and place it in there, somewhere sort of in the middle. You know, I don't want it too close to the eyes, so I'm going to go back a little bit further, but you can do wherever you want. That's just where I want my antennas to hang. Pull it all the way through, and then it's a super easy process for getting this attached. You can either leave it like that and just keep sewing, but what I'm going to do is kind of tie a little knot around it with the working yarn. That way stays on, because sometimes you don't want it to slide out. So now it's got a little knot, and then we're just going to go right back in and bring it out somewhere in the bee. Super simple to attach. No sewing is required for the antennas. And again, that chain that you did at the end, or this part that you did with single crochets, is going to determine where your antennas hang down. So as you can see, mine are kind of long. It's kind of in line with the eyes. On this other one I did, it's a little shorter. It's in line with the headband. So it just kind of depends on where you want it to hang. This one I wanted it to be a little bit longer. So that'll be good. And then we're going to go ahead and attach our other antenna. And I'll show you more on this antenna, how you do the knot. So I realize I kind of went fast through it on the last one, so I'll go a little more in depth about it this time. But this just secures it on so that they don't happen to come off. When I first did this one kind of tends to come completely off. So yeah, we're avoiding that by doing a knot. So go ahead and attach the antenna where you want it. And try not to do too big of a gap right there from where you go into the bee and where you come out, because that's going to be seen right there, where that's how we're doing our knot. So you don't want to make it very big. All right, and using this part of the bee as part of your knot, you're gonna take your working yarn, you're gonna hold it, you're gonna cross it over the antenna, leaving a little loop. You're gonna take your yarn needle, go under the antenna, but stay over this loop, and then pull it tight so that it's right up at the top, and then go right back in on one of the spots where you came in the first time, and then pull it back out somewhere on the bee, and go ahead and cut it off. That's the easiest way I've found to attach the antennas. Otherwise, you can kind of sew it with this right there, but that gets hard because this is so small. So it's almost a little bit easier to just do a knot, and then you don't have to sew anything. But that is what I do. And then you have your cute little bee, and its antennas kind of can move around. You got wings. There you are. Be sure to share your cute creations on social media and tag us at Okey Dokey's Crochet. I would love to see your completed projects of Brent the Bee. And please feel free to rewatch, rewind, slow it down, anything you need to finish your bee. He does not get a smile. If you want to add a little one, you can. Otherwise, Brent the Bee is complete.